Well, let me thank my good friend Mel and the Constituency for Africa for hosting this event on Sudan's challenges of transitioning to a democracy and having me say a few words. I always appreciate you including me. It's great to be a part of this event, especially with the Prime Minister and the Ambassador, General William Ward, the first commander of AFRICOM, and all the other panelists. Prime Minister Hamdok, I hope to visit Sudan once again when we are able to travel safely. As you remember, in January of 2020, I led a bipartisan codel to the country where members of Congress spoke with the Prime Minister, his judiciary, and Parliament during the early stages of the transition. We also spoke with civil society and young women on the changes needed to be made and who needed to be involved if the transition was going to be sustainable and help improve relations with the United States. Although it's sometimes hard for citizens to recognize, I believe Sudan has truly made improvements from the autocratic former leader who committed war crimes, decimated the country for over 30 years, enabled a civil war and mismanagement of resources that we know killed hundreds of thousands and displaced millions of people. But there have been incremental strides toward a new Sudan. The Prime Minister recently announced his new cabinet, continuing his promise of a transition to a civilian-led government. And many of us in Congress pushed for Sudan to be removed from the state-sponsored terrorist list because the U.S. saw the progress that had been made regarding reforms while trying to secure foreign financing to eradicate the country's debt. This truly is the only way Sudan will transition to democracy, by having a stable economy and an environment where its citizens can thrive. Sudan's high inflation, prolonged currency shortages, and a successful black market remain pressing challenges causing protests in recent weeks over the deteriorating economy. Prime Minister, I urge you to stay the course. Democracy is a slow and sometimes painful process, and we all know that here because we've seen the pain even in the United States. Last Congress, I supported H.R. 7682, Sudan Democratic Transition, Accountability, and Fiscal Transparency Act of 2020, which was introduced in the House and was a step in the right direction as the country tries to strengthen its rule of law, promote peace and security, adhere to human rights policy, and include women in every aspect of society. We in Congress look forward to building upon this legislation, and will be monitoring this closely to ensure the country has sufficient resources needed to succeed. Democracy is led by the people. Sudan's civilian-led protests ultimately led to a new transitional government that is making headway to a renewed bilateral relationship with the U.S. and ultimately to democracy. A new Sudan must integrate the Sudanese professional associations, made up of doctors, lawyers, journalists, teachers, and engineers, to all facets of society. A strong civil society adds value and builds upon a democratic society. The Declaration of Freedom and Change, signed by other civil society and political coalitions, is a document that can lead the country to democracy because it is an inclusive document. As with any new democracy, strengthening human rights policies are a key factor, and a new Sudan must continue to strive for press freedoms and give journalists the space to criticize and report stories that may oppose the government without the threat of detainment or assault. A new Sudan must open up the internet and give its citizens the right to communicate on social media platforms, whether it's to oppose the government, mobilize a peaceful protest, or use it for entertainment purposes. The internet can no longer be used as a tool for suppression, especially during elections. Where some places in Sudan are turning a corner, we know there is still violence and despair, like in Darfur. This January, there were reports of violence where inter-ethnic violence killed at least 155 people, wounded many more, and displaced tens of thousands. Undoubtedly, this led to thousands of people being displaced and people's homes being looted and destroyed. This violence is perpetrated by Darfur being impoverished and plagued with illegal weapons and divisions over the limited resources of water and land. The UN Integrated Transition Assistance Mission in Sudan has replaced UNAMID, and its transition and its mandate is to support the transitional government in Sudan in its transition to democracy. But I want to reiterate the protection of citizens during and following the final drawdown must be a priority. 4 strategic objectives of support for political transition, peace processes, and the implementation of peace agreements, peace building and the mobilization of external resources are all interdependent, and Sudan's political transition cannot occur without economic resources. Despite the Prime Minister's strides to democracy, the people of Sudan are still suffering and are frustrated because of the high cost of basic necessities like bread, electricity, and fuel. This has led to violent protests similar to those in the former regime. What can we do here in Congress to help? I'd like to know that. I know the Prime Minister was given the tall task of bringing a country out of international isolation for 3 decades, but people who are hungry just want to be fed. There continues to be many members of Congress who watch Sudan closely and want to see the country succeed. We would like to receive updates on what's happening in the country, how our assistance is directly affecting the people of Sudan, and how U.S. policy is adapting based on the new strides the country is making toward democracy. I also continue to urge that the AU play a key role in mediating the dispute between Ethiopia and Sudan, an area, especially the land, where is occupied by Ethiopian farmers, and continue to support and help peaceful negotiations, acceptable terms for all parties regarding the GERD. I will continue to highlight Sudan here in Congress, but now that a cabinet is in place, what can Congress legislatively do to help strengthen the country's economy and continue to strengthen U.S.-Sudan bilateral ties? Thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing how today's event goes. Thank you.